Right now on Denver 7 News at 5 a.m. for the first time since this dramatic body cam video was released today, we will hear from the victims injured when Denver police opened fire on a suspect in a crowded downtown area.
They're recovering, they're still a little bit shaken up from the incident, but they are recovering.
So we're breaking down what's next as a grand jury will now investigate the officer's actions.
As kids head back to school, they are still feeling the impact of the pandemic. And today we'll get a long-awaited look at how test scores have been affected.
And if you were hoping to see Russell Wilson and other top Broncos players in action this weekend, well, you might be out of luck. Head coach Nathaniel Hackett explains his strategy for who starts in the preseason.
You know me, I don't like the preseason. In the end, we want to be smart with the guys.
Yeah, don't want to risk any injury, but Russell Wilson's first game as a Bronco could be back in Seattle.
Yeah,
that will be exciting.
Right. I mean, they need the practice, but not in the preseason, I guess.
Yeah, don't want to risk getting hurt. Thanks for joining us on this Wednesday morning. I'm Brian Sanders.
And I'm Nicole Brady. Lisa, good news today. We're going to dry out from the rain we've had.
I'm missing the sunshine. Yeah. I think a lot of people are. Today, we're going to see a lot more of it. There will be a few areas of patchy fog here early this morning, and we do have another ozone action day alert going into effect here. You can see over the northern Front Range, but the last of the showers now moving out of parts of southeastern Colorado. So we've got a much drier drive early this morning with our temperatures warming, and you're going to find here early on we're in the 50s and 60s, a cool start to our morning, but we're going to see a nice warm up in store. So on our bus stop forecast, as your kids are leaving early on, they could, it looks like, ride their bike to school today. We're going to see early morning temps again on the chillier side. 54 in Denver, 59 in Thornton, 63 in Broomfield. But on the bus stop planner, we're going to be at about 80 degrees by the time they're getting home today. Highs will be right around 83 to near 85 with a dry afternoon. So some pretty nice patio weather today, more 70s than 60s, Jason, in the mountains. It is going to get cooler again this weekend with another chance of some heavy rain. We'll take a closer look at that coming up.
Yeah, I had so much rain yesterday. There saw some pooling on the roadways down south by Park Meadows. I saw it here on Highway 36 yesterday. You can still see some damp areas up on the turnpike here, but not seeing any lingering issues with that flooding, especially through Broomfield here. Take a look at the drive downtown. It looks okay for the most part. Just got some flashing lights over here on the northbound side of I-25 right before you get to 20th Street. Shouldn't slow you down. You have very light traffic at this point of the morning drive anywhere you want to go, and you can see that on the drive times as well. I-25, I-76. You will have to deal with that fog out to the eastern plains or up to the northeast, I-76 and I-70 and some of the county roads, Highway 34, that sort of thing, some of the state highways, but for the most part, it looks pretty nice here in Metro Denver.
Well, today we will hear from some of the people injured after police opened fire on a man with a gun in a downtown Denver crowd. 6 innocent bystanders, you might remember, were hit by either bullets or shrapnel as the bars were closing in Lodo. DPD has released new body camera video and other details from that night. As we start with the look from above, this is video from a street light at 20th and Larimer. This is just after 1:30 in the morning on Sunday, July 17th. You can see the crowd gathered outside the bar, and then cameras show the suspect, Jordan Waddy, getting into a fist fight, which prompts police to move in. And it was seconds later, Waddy starts looking for a way to get away from the officers. That's when the situation escalates to police eventually opening fire.
Okay, so let's slow it down now and add some context here. 3 days after that shooting last month, police told us that when confronted by police, Waddy ignored verbal orders and walked through the crowd. And as you can see here in this video, when Waddy gets between the two cars and the officer approaches, he appears to grab his gun by the barrel and then throws it and puts his hands up. Watch this, though, in slow motion. Now, just before the shooting, the suspect appears to tug on his gun 2 or 3 times before he throws it. We timed out this critical moment, and from the instant the gun leaves Waddy's hand before the officer fires a shot, 5 frames of video elapse. That is 1/6 of a second.
So this morning we have team coverage. Attorney and Denver 7 reporter Jessica Crawford is going in depth on the next step of the investigation now that our state attorney general is involved. But we want to start with Christian Lopez, who is near the scene in Lodo where those shooting victims were caught in the crossfire. And before they speak this afternoon, you are hearing from their attorney.
Yeah, we'll be talking to 3 of the 6 victims at around 2 p.m. today, so you'll be able to hear it in their own words on Denver 7 News at 4. And we talked to an attorney who is helping guide them through all of this. And he said, and as you can probably imagine, they are all still very shaken up about the whole thing. They suffered various injuries, including a man who had a bullet lodged in his arm. And we have his x-ray photos today. He had to have surgery to get that taken out. Another victim had a bullet go through her arm, and the third was hit in the foot. And the attorney we talked to, his name is Chris Whitney. He said after watching that body camera footage that was released yesterday, he is surprised that those injuries weren't a lot worse.
We saw Denver officers firing live rounds into a crowd. And it's very fortunate. It's actually incredible that only 6 individuals were injured. Because you think about it, firing into a crowd where there's a good 60, 70 people, maybe even more, it's very fortunate no one had died.
We're also hearing from the attorney representing the suspect, Jordan Waddy, and he said that his perspective is that this was an overreaction and said the body camera video shows his client was surrendering. Now, he acknowledges that police, they have to make split-second decisions in situations like this, but he says that the way he sees it at that point, Waddy wasn't threatening or attempting to hurt anyone.
You see he's obviously thrown the gun. It's gone. It's like out of the frame. His hands are up. To me, that's not a split-second decision, And, they didn't just shoot him once. This isn't just split-second decision, one shot. No, they fired on him 6 or 7 times, and they fired into 2 different crowds while they were doing it. It's reckless, it's inexcusable, it's excessive. They need to be held accountable.
And this is all just the very beginning of what will clearly be a very lengthy investigation into whether or not those officers responded lawfully. And the Denver Police Department says that those 3 officers who were involved, they are on modified duty at the moment. Live in Denver this morning, I'm Christian Lopez, Denver 7.
All right, thank you, Christian. As she mentioned, Denver police officers had to make a decision about their response to Jordan Waddy in a fraction of a second. Denver 7 watched the body cam video with a former patrol officer who is now a professor of criminal justice at Metropolitan State University of Denver.
I think that's where it can get really tricky when these things are, he threw the gun, because we can watch this video 3 or 4 times versus the officer seeing in real time. Real time is much different.
She says between growing violence in downtown Denver and high-profile mass shootings across the country right now, officers feel more pressure to react quickly when they perceive potential gun violence among crowds of people. But also there are important questions that still need to be answered.
Really what the officers' perceptions were. I would want to know what was going through their mind when they took those shots and what they saw. Also, if it was bullets or ricochets that hit the bystanders, I think that's going to be a really important question too.
Hervey is an advocate for staggered closing of bars downtown to avoid large groups of people on the streets late at night, which can slow these kinds of incidents from happening.
Well, another big announcement on this. For the first time ever, Denver District Attorney Beth McCann will convene a grand jury to investigate a police shooting. I sat down with her last month where she told me it was pretty rare for any department to convene a grand jury to investigate an officer-involved shooting. She explained how a new law will help add more transparency to this investigation.
When a grand jury does consider whether to file a criminal case against a police officer, if they choose not to, that's generally the end of the story. Everything is secret. And so I actually requested the sponsors of that bill in 2020 to include a provision that would require the grand jury to write a report and publish it if they do not indict a police officer.
McCann issued a statement yesterday saying for the community to trust in the outcome from this incident, it's important that independent members of the community review the facts, evidence, and law regarding whether these officers should be criminally charged. So we want to bring in Denver 7's Jessica Crawford now. You're an attorney, Jessica. Explain what this means, the next steps toward the grand jury here.
So the next steps here are a grand jury proceeding, and it's all about the Denver County citizens deciding whether a suspect should be charged with a crime. In this case, whether officers should be charged with a crime in that shooting. So a grand jury is made up of 12 people. They'll hear only from the prosecutor. They do not hear from the defense. The prosecutor presents evidence of the crime, which in this case could be video of that shooting like we showed you earlier, or maybe shell casings. The grand jurors may also hear from witnesses. Then they'll discuss whether there is enough evidence to indict the suspect. Here's the thing, only 9 of the grand jurors have to agree on whether or not to charge that suspect for there to be a decision. And if the grand jury chooses to charge the suspect, that's called an indictment. If they don't, that's called a no bill, and then the suspect would not have to go to trial on those charges. The fact that the DA called for a grand jury signals the kind of possible charges because they're only used for felony cases. For other potential crimes, prosecutors can bring the charges themselves. In this situation, it is important to impanel a grand jury for a few reasons. First, because shooting at and injuring people could definitely constitute a felony crime. But it also allows the public to play a role in something that really impacts us, which is how our public servants are allowed to treat our citizens and what they can expect when they make choices that lead to injuring citizens.
That's a big component right there, getting the public involved.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Jessica.
Well, of course, we'll be following this story as new developments come in. If you want to watch that full body camera video, you can see that on thedenverchannel.com. We also have that on our free Denver 7 Plus app.
I'm John Matarese. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, they're all filled with ads getting you to make an impulse purchase on the spot. Why this keeps happening and what you can do about it. Coming up.
And the holidays will be here before you know it, which means you need to book your travel now, though. How much airfares are expected to jump after Labor Day?